Okay, a client sent me a rough sketch, right? And then this is the rough sketch of his house, and then his house currently it's a flat roof, and then he would like us to change to design the Tuscany roof on top of this rough sketch, right? Of course the rough sketch is not that perfect. That is why I just printed the picture of it. So to begin, uh here are the measurements of the house and everything, so we'll just have to now and then refer to them as we will be designing the Tuscany roof using this rough sketch, right? Okay, I will just take it I will just take it aside so that I can refer to it easily, right? Oh, another point that I have to mention, since we have like 7 meters on the rough sketch, we have to use our ruler to represent the very same measurements but using our ruler, right? So what I like to do, since maybe for example using this 7 meters, uh, what I usually do, I'll use this centimeters, maybe like 1 centimeter, associate it with the actual meter on the actual ground, right? Since like we have 7 meters, for me it's going to be 7 centimeters. I know that this 7 centimeters on this paper represents um, 7 meters on the actual ground. So keep that in mind. Understand? So yeah, let's begin. Right, so we have the front of the garage is 6.4, right? 6.4 meters. For us it's going to be 6.4 centimeters. That is what I do, from 0 to 6, almost to 6.5, but since uh, the rough sketch says 6.4, we're going to end on 6.4, right? So keep such things in mind. And then on the side it says 7 meters. We're going to say from 0 centimeter to 7 centimeter. Cool. Then the back of it says 3.20. For us, we are focusing on first decimal point. Since it says 3.20, we're going to say 3.2. Yeah, it's going to be 3, oh, it's 3.5. Yeah, 3.5, from 0 to 3.4. Okay, cool. Then from there it says 4.20. 4.20, yeah. For us, we're going to say 4 is from 0 to 4.2. This. And then another thing, it's going to be 2 meters. This one is going to be 2 meters. I'm gonna say it's from 0 to 2. 0 to 2. And then please guys, use your you guys call them T rulers or whatsoever. I'm not used to them, or I'm used to drawing this way. So follow every rule that you can to make sure that everything it's according to the way you are used to it. It's going to be 1.3, going to be 0. From 0 to 1.3, like this. Pretty cool. Then 6.3. 6.3. Remember guys, we are still drawing the outside walls, so it's going to be 1.5 meter. For us it's going to be 1.5 centimeter. And then to make sure that your corners or your angles are because of, for this kind of roof we are going to, or for the rough sketch that we received, our corners, they have to be 90 degrees angle. More of this, you see, that is a 90 degree. Or to make sure that it's a 90 degree, you use a protractor. You place the dot on the corner to make sure that this line is aligning with this drawn line, and then this 90-degree line is aligning with the with the with the line that you already drawn, which is this one, which is 90-degree angle. As you can see, 0 to 90 degree angle. So for me, I'm used to it to a point that I don't have to confirm with the protect. But for you, for your own sake, I highly recommend that you do that. And then please make sure that you watch the the videos on how to use a protector, because of using the protector is really gonna help you to make sure that your structure there is perfect, and then it doesn't, all the angles are the same, since for this kind of roof we require that. Okay, so from here it's going to be 6.7 meter on the rough sketch. Then for us it's going to be 6.7 centimeter, since this is 6.567, it's going to be somewhere here. Okay, cool. And then we have 5.4 plus 4.4. Okay, if something like this, 0, we have 5.4, it's going to be 5.4, then from here 4.4, 4.4, it's going to lead us here. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. And then from here we have 4 meters. For us it's going to be 4 centimeters. 4 centimeters to 0. Cool. Then from there it's going to be 1.5, it's going to be 0.5 centimeters for us. Okay, cool. Then from there it's going to be 4.8 meters on the rough sketch of the client, but for us it's going to be 4.8. Yeah, 4.8, 4.8, somewhere here. Cool. Okay, yeah, somewhere here. Okay, then from here it's going to be 2 meters on the rough sketch. For us it's going to be 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters. Then from there it's going to be 3 meters. 1.5, here's 1.5, so it's going to be 1.5 centimeters. Then from here to here on the rough sketch it says 3 meters. For us it's going to be 3 centimeters, just like you see. Okay, perfect. We are done with the rough sketch of the floor plan, or the outside walls, because of that is the walls that we require. We require this kind of walls, these walls, we have drawn these walls, because these ones are not important for this kind of roof, for the structure of it. So right now we are starting the most difficult part of it. Please, you have to pay attention for this one. Okay, cool. What I usually do is that, okay, let me do this using a pencil. When you have like 1 2 3, 1 2 3, this 3, maybe I can say walls, more like this, 1 2 3, we are going to have a hip somewhere here. We know that a hip is something like this. We just know that. And then the floor of the the flow of the water on top of the roof is going to be this direction, on this part this direction, on this part this direction. You understand? So let's start with that. So for me, I usually follow the best the standard one, or the recommended angles for the roof, which is 45 degrees. So from this corner, we just going to make a marker here, 45. Then on from this corner again, you see the important part of knowing how to use the protector that I'm talking about is going to be very handy in this kind of drawings. So 45 again, 45 from this line going upwards, and then going to form that hip from this point to this 45 degrees. So meaning we're having something of this. The important part of making points is just that when you are going to make a line, you just know that you are following that rule or that point from 2 points. But I highly recommend that you use a pencil for this kind of drawings. I can really estimate the line, when to stop, when it's going to intersect, or maybe not intersect, where it's going to meet with that other one, right? So for this point, it's going to be this point to that highlighted first point. You see, it's perfect. So just imagine if you have drawn this line using a pen. Now you have messed up everything, you have to start from scratch. That is why I recommend that you use a pencil. But so do not be like me and then try to attempt it with a pen. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. Then another point is that, not always, but when we have something like this, this point really shows us where we're going to have our, it's called, okay, this is a hip, and then here we're gonna have, we have something like valleys, yeah, valleys, and then this line which is dividing this direction of the flow of the roof, and also this direction of the flow of water on top of the roof, is called a ridge. Yeah, it's called a ridge. So after a hip and a hip intersection, or where they meet, we're always gonna have a hip. So how long will our hip be? Please use a pencil. I also don't know. That is why for this part I'm going to use a pencil. Okay, cool. Then we know that, okay, we have a ridge here. Okay, cool. So but then I'm not highlighting it with a pen because of I don't know how long will it be. It will stop where it intersects with a valley or a hip. So keep that in mind. Okay, cool. Then from there, we're going to start with we're gonna have a valley here. Let's start with our valley. So what I usually do, which I don't recommend that you do because of you're still beginning, or maybe you're still learning, what I usually do, and then this kind of move requires your hand to be a little bit steady. So for me to avoid this thing of coming to the protector and measuring everything, making sure that it's perfect, or it's 45 degrees, which I recommend that you do, I just place my ruler here, and then I just move it slightly, or maybe use this kind of line, align it with the drawn line underneath, more like this, and then I just move it slightly. There we have our valley. So someone is gonna ask why we don't have like these two valleys and maybe to be the same. Keep in mind, like the distance from this wall, and then the distance from this wall, they are not the same, or they are not equal from with the distance from this wall to this distance to this wall, right? Let me show you how. From 0 to here, this is 1.5, and then from this line to this line is 2 meters. So this valley is going to be intersected first with this ridge because of this wall, it's close to this line, hence we have a ridge here before this one. I'm gonna show you how. So since I know that, okay, we have a ridge here and we have this ridge with this valley there in the where they intersect, that's when I will be able to highlight, because of where I know where they're intersecting, which is the beauty of using a pencil. There I have my valley right here. Then from here we have a valley intersecting with a ridge. What's gonna happen? Most of the time, uh, maybe we're going to have another hip which is going to intersect with another hip or another ridge or something else, we don't know. So for this part, I'm going to do what? I'm going to make that move that I'm telling you about, which you have to measure. I'll show you how, but for me, let me just do that move to be a little bit faster. So from this point we are going to have a ridge. Why we are going to have a hip? Why a hip? It's because of, remember, when we have something like a 90 degree, which is outside, which this line and this line, they are forming some sort of an angle which is 90 degree, we are always gonna have a hip. Hence I'm sure that this is a hip. If I'm not sure, if you don't believe that it's a hip, you will see. So I use my pencil, because of I don't know how long will my hip be. That is why from this point I'm sure that is 45 degrees, because of I'm measuring with this from this one. From this point coming to this point, I just move my ruler slightly and then I highlight my hip. I don't know how long will my hip be. If you But before you can do that, for you, for tutorial sake, or maybe for your drawing tutorial sake, just place your protector like this. You know that, okay, from this point to this point we have a 45 degrees, you see, hence the line that I've made. I'm sure of it because of I have measured with this one, but I recommend that now and then you have to use the protector to be sure and not assume just like me. So we have a hip right there. So we have an intersection of a ridge and a valley that's going to force us to form a hip. Then measuring from the one that I have drawn, the line that I've drawn, I just move it slightly, then that I know that my hip will intersect with this hip here. Understand? If you're not sure, don't do this. Just grab your protector, put your point here, so that it's going to fall. You see, it's giving us, this line is giving us 45 degrees, hence I use that move. Okay, cool. Let me just highlight it quickly. Cool. Have our hip right there. We have our hip right there. Cool. Then from this point we don't know. And then another point I don't know if I have already highlighted is that when we have a hip and a hip, this point really gives us the direction of where will our ridge be directed to. From this point we cannot have like a ridge directed to this point. We can have it, but you have to be sure of your story. That is why for me, I have like certain rules which I follow, which prevents me from making mistakes, which is the ones that I've shown, this one and this one. Since we have like a 90 degree again, I'm sure that from this point we're going to have a what? We're going to have a hip, right? So we're just going to, I'm not sure about the measurement, so that's why I'm just measuring to have that 45 degrees. These are 45 degrees that I have to follow using my pencil from this point to the point that I've made. Just drag it like that. Cool. I know that I'm gonna have a hip right here. Then before I can move to that point, remember the point that I've made here, that we're going to have a ridge. For me, I just look at the way this point is directed to, then I know that we're going to have like a reach from that point going to that direction. Then I don't know how long will my reach be. I just make this kind of a line. Okay, cool. This ridge will at some point intersect with another, maybe a hip or a veil or whatsoever. Keep in mind the the wall that we didn't the wall that we said we're going to pay attention after this one, which I already highlighted that this one comes first, this one comes second. That is why we have to move to this point, because of here's going to be a little confusion. So before we can move to the back, let's solve this part first. So remember, for me, I just position my ruler like this. I already know that this line is 45 degrees. I just move it slightly here. Okay, I know. Oh, okay, at this point, the important point that I have to mention. So remember, I said something like this. Remember, I said something like this. In 90 degrees, we're going to have a hip. We are always, and then sometimes we're gonna have like a 90 degrees, which is more tucked in. I like to say this one is exposed, this one is tucked in. For example, we already we I always know that this part or this point where we have a 90 degrees which is more tucked in, we are going to have a veil. Definitely gonna have a veil. That is why at this point we have this one is exposed, we have a hip, this one is more tucked in, we have a veil. That is why I'm going to highlight it. So how long will it be? Remember the point, the reach that I have made that I wasn't sure of its distance. The important part of highlighting or maybe using a pencil is this part, that I don't have to cross my valley with that reach that we made. Cool, you see it's coming along perfectly. Remember the hip that I told you about, because of the an outside or maybe exposed 90 degree, the hip that I already told you about is this one. Then from here we have an intersection of a valley and also a ridge, meaning we're going to have a hip. Where will our hip go? We are not sure, but if you can come back to this point, we had this ridge and also this valley. Our hip went up straight or went up to maybe any direction, but for us, because of maybe for me, because of my experience, I already know where will this hip be directed to. For example, we have this hip right here, so we have to intersect our hip with this hip. How we're going to do that? Not with a straight line, because of there is an intersection here or a meeting point. That is why we have to make it to face a different direction, hence that. Why did I make it short? Because of this hip that I already highlighted. I hope I'm making sense. uh, I'm not just shaping and confusing you guys. Cool. Remember the point that I told you about the hip and a hip, that we have some sort of a point. We already know that we're going to have some sort of a reach going to that direction because of this point. It's not always the case, but I usually look at it that way. Okay, cool. So let's sort out maybe this part, since we already are more through with this one. Okay, so remember the point that I told you about, three sides we're gonna have a hip. Remember this, remember this rule. We apply it here. 1 2 3, we're gonna have a hip somewhere here. To be sure, do this 45, I highlight it. Then from this point again, highlight it, 45 again, so I know that my hip and this other hip will intersect somewhere here. So from this point going to this point, just let me stop here, and then because of, and then another hip, that hip that I already did, you're using a highlighting a point. I just do this. So we're having a hip and a hip intersection here. Okay, cool. So we have a remember this part whereby we had 1.5 distance. This part from this wall to this wall we had 1.5, and then from this wall to this wall we had 2 meters. For this one they are more like equal. That is why we are going to have something like this. Then moving from this, we're going to have a valley. Why a valley? Because of that 90-degree is more tucked inside. Just move it slightly, but for you, please measure. You're gonna have this valley and then this valley here. They're going to intersect. Why? Because this line and this line, they are more of the same distance. From this wall to this wall is the same distance as this wall to this wall. Hence we are going to have these valleys intersecting, and then these two hips intersecting or meeting. Then to connect this hip to this valley, we're going to have what? A ridge, because of this point. Then it's more like a guide or a direction guide to where will our ridge be going to. Alright, sweet. Coming, we have to link this part with this part with this part. Okay, cool. Remember the rule: 1 2 3. We're gonna always have we're always gonna have a hip. 1 2 3, we're gonna have a hip. 45, coming to this part, 45 again. So from this point to this point, I'm gonna have something like this. 45, this point to that highlighted point. Okay, cool. We are having a hip and a hip here. That's why I'm using a pencil, because of I didn't know how long will my hip be or where they will intersect. Hence I used a pencil. Then we're gonna have, remember again, we have 1 2 1 2, which is a more of a 90-degree angle, but a exposed one. So meaning we're gonna have measuring. I'm gonna measure using this one. With my point right here. Okay, let me just highlight so that you don't get confused. Here to here, then here to here. Okay, cool. So we're gonna have, remember, a hip and a hip. After a hip and a hip we have a ridge. Straight ridge intersecting with what? Intersecting with this hip that we formed here. Now we are only just gonna highlight it. Cool. Here's something like this, right? Then after this we're gonna have okay, it's an intersection of a hip and a ridge, meaning we're going to have some sort of a hip that's going to link with the valley, with this valley. Let's focus on this one, since, or maybe we can also focus on this one, it doesn't matter. So because of we're having some sort of a box side, or maybe a box structure, we know that our direction of this hip that we are going to form, it will go to this direction, because it's trying to close the four corner structure. It's more like a rectangle or a square. Hence I'm sure that we have to direct our hip to this side. Where will our hips stop? I don't know. Let me just highlight it like this. Cool. We are only left with these points: 1 2 3. We have to connect it with also this point. Fine. Okay, let me think. Okay, remember we have a tucked in 90-degree angle. A tucked in 90-degree angle, we're definitely sure we're gonna have a valley. How long will our valley be? We don't know. Let me just highlight using this one, measuring using this kind of a line of this ruler with the wrong line. Just gonna highlight it like that. Cool. Already I have an idea that okay, this hip that I've highlighted is going to intersect with this valley that I have highlighted, meaning somewhere here is going to be a meeting point. Cool. Now let me just highlight it, this valley, to make sure, which I recommend that you guys must do. This point, we are always gonna, whatever line that we make is going to be 45 degrees, hence the highlighted line that I already drawn, the highlighted one with a pencil is 45 degrees. How did I come up with this 45 degrees? Because of this line. If I can, this line is aligning with this line is aligning, as long as they are more like parallel. Yeah, they're more like parallel, they're always gonna be the same angle, they're going to be on the same angle. So let me just highlight this fairly, then I'm gonna stop here. Because of what? Oh, I made a mistake. You see, the important part of using a pencil, but it's not that much of a big deal. Then another hip. Cool. You see, it's coming along. So now we're trying to link this point and this point. Why am I not talking about this point? Is because of already there's a meeting point here, so we are no longer focusing on this one. It's this portion, we are already done with it. Cool. So now it's going to be the matter of connecting this. Okay, it's a hip and a valley, and then we know that hip and a valley, after that we're gonna have something like a it cannot be a valley, because of now we have to divide this portion of the flow of water on the roof with this portion, so meaning it's going to be this direction and also this direction. So a valley brings water on one, maybe there's this line, you see, it brings water to this part and then water to this part, meaning there's going to be a lot of flow of water here. So for this part, we want the flow of water to be that direction and then this direction. Okay, cool. So meaning we're good. And then the perfect thing that's going to really help with that is what? A ridge. A ridge is what? This one, this one, this one, this one. It's a ridge. How long will our ridge be? We don't know. That is why I'm using a pencil. Highlight it from this point going to this point, dividing the flow of water going to that side and also another water coming to this side, the flow of water. Cool. And then, so this ridge cannot just be long because of it has to intersect with something. What point is there? What point is missing? This point and this point. Cool. For this one, we have a tucked in 90 degrees and 90-degree angle. Hence, we're going to have some sort of a valley here. So measuring the 45 degrees line that I already drawn with this ruler, I just move it, my ruler slightly to this point that I want to focus on. Then because of this 90-degree angle, which is more tucked in, I already know that it's a valley. So from this point, maybe taking it to the valley, taking it to the ridge, I know that there's going to be a meeting point here. Cool. Okay, cool. Let me do that. Oh, just moved slightly, but okay, doesn't matter. So every part that you have somehow sorted, please, if you are also using a pen just like I'm doing, please highlight it so that you don't get confused. Cool. We have a separation of the flow of the flow of water to that direction and then to this direction. Cool. So now you must link this point, and this point. Cool. We already know that we have a 90-degree angle, which is more exposed, or yeah, exposed. So meaning we're gonna have a hip. How long will our hip be? We are not sure. So to be on the safe side, I already know how the line will be like, but for your sake I'm going to just highlight it with 5 degrees. Then we know that okay, it's gonna come this kind of direction. We just highlight it. Cool. Remember, a hip and a hip. After that we're gonna have what? A valley separating the flow through of the flow filter to that direction and then to this direction. How long will our reach be? We don't know, but let's just draw with a pencil. Okay, cool. So our reach is going to stop here where it is intersecting with the hip. So since we have already sorted that part, we do what? We highlight. Okay, cool. That hip sorted, the reach sorted. Now you can clearly see what's going on. The flow of water to that direction, the flow of water to this direction. Now we have to separate here to that direction and to this direction. At this point you don't need a ruler. If you have done everything correctly, then yeah, we are done. You see, now our roof is done. You understand? So let me just highlight certain things. This is a ridge, this is a hip, this is a valley. See, yeah, I think we are done with everything. So this is the roof. This is the sketch that the client sent us. From this sketch we were able to use this sketch, as long as it has measurements, to come up with this kind of roof, which is perfect the way it is. So yeah,